Our keynote speakers have a very relevant story to tell that demonstrates how athletes at every level can be impacted by doping. Anti-doping programs are in place to help protect athletes, protect the integrity of sport, and to help ensure a clean sport. That is why the Partnership for Clean Competition supports some of the world's top scientists and innovators in high-quality anti-doping research and development. Olympians and world champions, Madison Chock and Evan are joining us directly from events in Japan, where they recently won their first world championship. Together, they've competed in 3 Olympic Games, including silver medalists in the team event in 2022. They competed in 2018 and 2014. They have competed together in 10 world championships, again, winning the world championships this year. 12 US championships, winning it in 2023, 2022, 2020, and 2015, and 7 Four Continents championships. They also just arrived, as I said, from Japan, where they helped Team USA secure the first place win at the ISU World Team Trophy in figure skating, and they're not done yet. So we're excited to have them share their story, and I'd like to invite Madison and Evan up to the stage.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you so much to everybody for having us today. Super honored to be here to share a little bit about our story. So Maddie and I just flew in from Japan last night. We're just a little jet lagged, so please bear with us a little bit. But we just had an incredible time in Japan. We were doing some touring as well as some competing. It's so cool to be here at the MLB headquarters. I'd like to say thank you to everybody here for hosting us. Our time in Japan, we got an opportunity to see some really, some parts of Japan we would have never otherwise seen. So we were up in the north in a province called Iwate. And there's a really famous baseball player named Shohei Ohtani, who's from Iwate. So we were actually in Iwate during the World Baseball Classic. And to see the way that this global game just brought everybody together was so incredible. And it was such a beautiful example of the power of sport and the way that it brings us together, people from different backgrounds, different ages. So to fly from Japan to come straight to the MLB headquarters, it's a little ironic, but thank you so much for having us today. You have one.
Yes, it's so great to be here with you all today. Evan and I are so grateful for this opportunity to speak. Okay, that's so much better. We've had 2 competitions and also performed in the Japanese Stars on Ice tour while we were there. So it was a wonderful week of skating for us. We won our very first ever world championship, a gold medal in our total career, which has been a long career. So that was an incredible experience. And then at World Team Trophy, we helped the US secure the gold medal. And that again was an incredible experience. The team event is such a unique and special event, and it only comes around every 2 years or 4 years. 4 years for the Olympics and 2 years for the World Team Trophy, specifically in Japan.
Next slide, Evan. Okay. So this is a photo from last weekend. This is our team, Team USA. My caption got shifted a little bit, but that's okay. So a little bit about the team event, because it's really unique in figure skating. Figure skating is a very individual sport, and it's rare that we get to come together as a team and compete as one. It's kind of like the Ryder Cup for golf. And like Maddie said, it only comes every 2 years or every 4 years in the case of the Olympics. So our most recent Olympic experience was in Beijing last February. And the games in Beijing were a little bit different than we had experienced before for a couple of reasons. One, they happened in the midst of the global pandemic. Two, it happened at the origin site of the global pandemic. And three, no fans were allowed to come. So we were skating in these massive venues for thousands of people, but they were virtually empty. So it was some kind of just bizarre experience, but regardless, we were extremely grateful for the opportunity to compete in the Olympics. There was a certain amount of uncertainty as to whether we'd even have the opportunity, considering Tokyo Games had been postponed. And needless to say, when the games came around, we were super excited, and we were selected to be in the team event for the first time in our careers.
We were incredibly excited, but also incredibly nervous, full of adrenaline. It was the first time for us to have the privilege to compete in the team event. And for our Olympic season, we wanted to stand out. We've always prided ourselves on being creative and pushing skating to different levels and really thinking out of the box. So for our Olympic performance, we decided to skate to Daft Punk, which is EDM music, very unusual for figure skating, especially during an Olympic season. So in this performance, I play an alien and Evan plays an astronaut, and we meet each other and tell a story on another planet that we named Planet Ice. So it was very fun for us to do this unique program, and we'd like to play it for you.
Thank you. That there are our teammates. Those are the people you could hear, because the rest of the venue is completely empty. But we're so proud of that performance for many reasons. Like you said, you know, in a field of Rachmaninoffs and Beethovens, we were out there skating to Daft Punk and being aliens and astronauts. And, you know, watching that brings me immediately back to Beijing. And I'm surprised at how emotional it is to watch it in front of a group of people.
I'm surprised at how nervous I felt.
And, you know, I'm sure many of you know where the story goes from there, but we're going to get into it. But before we do, we'd like to step back and talk a little bit about what goes into getting to that point. What does it take to get to the Olympics? So I'll share my story first. I'm 34, started skating at 4. So in my 30 years on the ice, I've spent more time on the ice than I could even imagine or count. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And when I was 9 years old, a Russian couple who had defected from the Soviet Union took jobs at the Ann Arbor Figure Skating Club as ice dance coaches. And I'm going to show my childhood photos here. And the young Russian couple took my sister and I as their first students. And in fact, my aunt, who was a skater herself and then went on to become an immigration lawyer, she offered her legal services to the Russian couple in exchange for 1 year of free ice dance lessons for her niece and nephew. So that's how I got my start in ice dance, with a little quid pro quo. But I didn't start with Maddie right away. Wasn't that lucky. But I had a wonderful partner named Emily. We started together as kids, and we grew up on the ice together. We skated together for 11 years in Ann Arbor with those Russian coaches. And, you know, it started off just a couple days a week, but the Russian coaches were very demanding. They were great, but they were very intense, and the time commitment grew pretty quickly. And by 7th grade, I was leaving school at 11 a.m. to go to the rink. I was skating 6 days a week, spending probably 30 to 40 hours a week at the rink. So, you know, extracurriculars and time spent hanging out with friends and, you know, family vacations were sacrificed. And obviously there was a lot of hard work, but there were also some incredible payoffs coming quickly. Emily and I started to travel internationally. We started to represent Team USA. I got hooked immediately. We were traveling to these faraway countries I would have never otherwise seen, places like Tallinn, Estonia, and Bulgaria and Taipei. And, you know, for a 12, 13-year-old boy, the life experience was incredible. So, you know, we had some great success. We became junior world champions and we qualified for the Olympics in 2010, despite having a stress fracture that year and coaches being pushed further than I wanted to be pushed and spending the year in one of those plaster casts. Somehow we made our first Olympics and we had an incredible experience there. But at that point I was 21 years old and I wasn't the 9-year-old boy in the photo anymore. And it was time for a new chapter. So we decided to change coaches. And luckily at that time, Michigan was the hotbed for ice dance. We didn't have to go far. We didn't have to relocate at all. In fact, the Olympic champions and the Olympic silver medalists were training in Canton, Michigan, which was 20 minutes away from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we decided to change coaches and we started training alongside the Olympic champions and the Olympic silver medalists. And so inspiring to see up close the way that the best skaters in the world work and live and treat their work. And the rink was just full of amazing skaters, including one Miss Madison Chock, who was there skating with her partner, Greg, at the time. So that's how Maddie and I came under one roof, under one coach, but with different partners. We were actually competing against each other for a while. And about 6 months into our training in Canton, Emily and I had an accident training. I was picking her up, and as I brought her down, her skate came down on the back of my leg, and it ended up severing my Achilles tendon fully. And I remember putting her down and taking my first step, and I turned to Emily and I asked if my skate had broken because it just felt like the blade had fallen off the heel. But I looked down at the skate was totally fine. And then like months later, I realized that feeling was what was happening on the inside of my leg. So needless to say, it was a terrible injury and I needed surgery and I was out for the whole season. And when I came back to skating, it was just really difficult to get back into it. I felt like I needed a fresh start. So I started looking for a new partner. This was in the summer of 2011. And fortunately for me, there was a very good skater at the rink who was also looking for a partner at the same time.
Spoiler alert, it was me. Yes, we both teamed up in Canton at that time, but I'll go back and take you back in time to the start of my journey. I began skating when I was 5 years old in Redondo Beach, California, and my idol was Michelle Kwan. She was phenomenal, as you well know. And we had grown up skating in some of the same rinks, not at the same time, but to just see her and know her story of her growing up in California, being an Asian American athlete, it was so inspiring to see someone who looked like me achieving her goals, becoming an Olympian, becoming multiple time world champion, was just incredible. And that really sparked my love for skating and sparked my dream of becoming an Olympian. And so with that, I'll say a little more. As a young skater, I also did gymnastics. I did dance. I did many different types of dance. You can see my ballet right there. That was early. I wasn't like very good then. I was figuring it out. But I loved performing on the ice, and my coaches took note of that. They saw my joy that I had when I skated and my love of footworks in particular. Not so much jumping. That wasn't really like for me, but they suggested, after taking note of that I try ice dance. And unfortunately at that time, there weren't very many ice dance coaches in California. So they suggested to my parents that we move to Michigan, where some of the best ice dance coaches in the world at that time were located. And my parents, being the wonderful people that they are and supporting me no matter what, through thick and thin, they were like, okay, yeah, let's give it a try. So I'm very grateful for that, because they put a lot of faith in that. I was 12 years old at the time. They put a lot of faith in me and in my dreams. And that belief really has inspired me since the beginning of my career as an ice dancer. So when I was 13, we picked up our lives and they got job transfers, and we moved across the country to Michigan so I could be an ice dancer. But shortly after that move, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was an incredibly difficult time for our family, probably definitely the most difficult time we've faced ever. And so with that, her and my dad began traveling back and forth from Michigan to Dallas, where she was receiving treatment from a specialist. And I would stay in Michigan and stay with friends of the family, or family would come out to stay with me so I could continue going to school and continue skating, which was obviously very difficult. I was distracted, worrying about my mom and everything, but through it all, she was an incredible force and so strong, and always encouraged me to enjoy my time on the ice and enjoy my moments with my friends, and really just relish in the fact that I get to train as a figure skater somewhere special with all of these incredible athletes. And so fortunately, she made it through her breast cancer, and she beat it, and she's been in remission ever since. But it was her strength that really inspired me, and I knew if she could go through that, I could go through anything I needed to go through on the ice. And that was a huge inspiration. So they are the main reason that I'm here, and they've supported me in my Olympic dream my entire life. And I'm very lucky and very, very grateful. When I was in Michigan, I found one of my first partners, Greg, and we had a lot of success at the junior level, and moved up to senior for a couple years before he decided to retire, which was a bit surprising to me because we were so young, and typically in ice dance, you have a long career. Some teams skate together for decades. And I still had a huge fiery passion for skating and wanted to go to the Olympics. We hadn't accomplished that goal yet. So I began looking for a partner, and who should I find but Evan Bates? And at the start of our partnership, well, even before we had our tryout, I had witnessed him through his injury and his perseverance, and the way he battled back and fought for his time on the ice and to come back to full strength. It was really, really remarkable. I mean, when you have a severed Achilles, that's not something that people often fully recover from, let alone return to full sport and figure skating where your foot is in a boot all the time. So that was an incredible testament to who Evan is as a person, his determination, his work ethic. And that really is what struck me, among other things, like his personality is really great. But that was one of the main reasons that I was really drawn to Evan and thought we would be a great fit.
So we started skating together in 2011, and honestly, the first year we didn't really have great results right away, but what we did have was a ton of fun together on the ice, a lot of chemistry. We were constantly laughing through our training sessions despite lackluster results. And the joy that we shared on the ice together became the foundation for our partnership. And I feel like that's the reason why we're still competing today, almost 2 decades later. With the joy came the results started to come. We ended up qualifying for the Olympics in Sochi 2014, and we had an amazing experience. We skated great. We didn't win a medal, but we accomplished all the goals that we set for ourselves that year, and we felt like the future was very bright. Only later did we realize that one of the most sophisticated doping schemes in the history of sport was happening right under our noses.
When that information came out in Sochi, it was incredibly frustrating as clean athletes to know that such a concerted effort was being made to cheat. And we have always had to work very hard for our successes. And it was incredibly difficult for us to reconcile with the fact that was happening. But still, we weren't deterred. We had a goal. We wanted to win an Olympic medal, and we didn't let that stop us. So we continued our career together. And the following year, we won our first world medal together. in 2015, and then we won another world medal the following year in 2016. So we felt like we had this nice momentum building up for the 2018 games in Pyeongchang. But then, as luck would have it, we faced some adversity yet again. And as we were beginning our preparations for the Olympic season in the summer of 2017, I sustained an injury to my ankle during training. We were preparing for our preseason camp, and we were being pushed probably much harder than we needed to be pushed at that point in the season. But we continued, and we loved skating and we loved working hard. So we thought that that was just what we needed to do. And I ended up getting injured. My blade got jammed into the ice as I was coming down from a lift, and I fractured fragments of my talus bone. And when I went to the doctor, he said that I would need surgery to remove the debris in my ankle, and that I would absolutely need surgery. And I was like, well, that's not going to work for me. I have an Olympic Games to go to. So he was very cooperative with my hard-headedness. And I was like, is there any way we can just postpone this and push through it? And he was like, okay, maybe, like, just try it, see how you feel. And so we did. I was taping my ankle every day to make sure the movement was limited, and we limited our ice time and just did the best we could with what we had, because we knew that was better than not going and not fulfilling all of that work that we had put in the last 4 years since Sochi. So we decided to just make it happen and do the best that we could.
So we ended up making the Olympic team, but the experience was not the Olympic dream that we had envisioned. Oh, that's Sochi. Sorry, I missed a slide. And this is Pyeongchang. So in the middle of our free dance, we belly flopped right on center ice. It was not choreographed. And it was so devastating after working for so many years. This was our second games, my third, and this was kind of our time. We felt like to medal. I mean, as soon as you do that, you're not medaling. We were mad and we were angry at the situation. We felt like we were going backwards. And, at this point in our careers, we're not young. You don't know how many Olympic experiences you get as an athlete. And if we were going to compete for another 4 years, we were kind of at our wits' end, and we needed to make a change. So we decided to change coaches. And at this point, the mecca of ice dance had shifted to Montreal. So we decided to leave Michigan, leave our families, and move to another country. So we started a new chapter with French and Canadian coaches in 2018. And these guys have completely changed our lives. There are many coaches there, but our main coaches there are Marie-France and Patrice Lauzon, who are a husband and wife team, who were an ice dance couple themselves and have really lived a very similar life to the one that we're living now. They competed in the Olympics, even had a very dramatic fall at the Olympics that caused them to withdraw as they were hoping to medal. They were world silver medalists and just good people. And when we moved to Canada and we started to see and be treated with this compassion from our coaches and from our team and be empowered as athletes, it completely changed everything for us. We started to fall in love with skating again, a love that we knew we had, but had kind of waned through the difficult times. And we just loved the process of coming to the rink and getting better and working on our craft. And soon the results started to come back. We won a US title again in 2020. It had been 5 years since we had won our first. And then afterwards, we were in the press conference and the media told us, that's the longest anyone's ever gone between national titles. Oh, great record. And then when the next year we won a world medal for the first time in 6 years. And at the press conference, the media said, that's the longest time anyone's ever gone between world medals. Great. These aren't the records that we really want, but we'll take them. So things started to go great. And leading into Beijing Olympics, we felt like this was finally the time we were going to accomplish our Olympic dream of winning an Olympic medal.
Yeah. So back to Beijing, the performance we showed you was one of the best and most gratifying performances that we'd had so far in our careers. And it was just an incredible feeling to be able to deliver that performance for our team when we were under pressure, because the last 4 years, the Pyeongchang games were kind of just looming over us a little bit. And even as we got to the spin in our free program of this performance, we talked to each other after the performance and we're like, oh, wow, we're just glad that spin went well, because that's what we had fallen on the previous year. And so making it through that little mental hurdle of our mind, just in our minds, was a big accomplishment too. But not only to just deliver that performance was really special to us. And on that day, with our free dance performance, we helped solidify Team USA's spot as Olympic silver medalists. And it was really special to be able to celebrate that with our team. Some of them we trained alongside with for years, and it was the best result that the US figure skating team had in a team event in history. So it was incredible to be a little part of that Olympic history. The next 24 hours, however, were a bit bizarre. We were all just blissfully going about our day, excited that we had won a medal. And later that evening, we would be going to the medal ceremony to be awarded our Olympic medal. So we got dressed in our gear, and it's a special outfit that Nike provides specifically for the podium. And we were instructed not wear it until the opportunity of the podium is there. And so we all got dressed. We felt so excited. We had our fresh gear on and we met up. We were taking photos, and then someone said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. The ceremony has been canceled." And we're like, "Canceled, not postponed? It's like maybe an hour." They're like, "No, it's been canceled." And we had very little information to go off of, but we all just kind of sat in the room for a while, waiting to hear more. When eventually we did start to hear more pieces of the news that there was a skater in the event who had been caught in a doping violation. And so we didn't know what that would mean for our moment and our medals. But as the story unfolded, we slowly learned more and kind of knew that we wouldn't be taking home that medal.
Right. But I don't think we recognized in the moment the kind of impact that Beijing would have on our lives. I mean, we still haven't gotten closure from this event that happened 15 months ago. We have the video, which we proudly show, that is evidence that we lived our Olympic dream and that we won an Olympic medal after years and years of hard work. But what we don't have is the actual medal. And what we'll never have is the medal, the moment on the podium in Beijing. Nor will we have, the opportunities that come after winning an Olympic medal, the press tour, the opportunity to capitalize, as many medal winning athletes have. So now it's been 15 months and still no medal of any color, which is difficult. But what we did leave Beijing with were empty medal boxes, which you can see Team USA has up there in the photo on the right, and which we actually brought with us today. And if it's okay, we'd like to pass them around if people want to see them. So after today, these are going to go on display at the US Olympic and Paralympic Museum in Colorado Springs. Please return them afterwards.
So we left Beijing with these boxes that you see and no medal. And eventually the story after we left the Olympics wasn't being covered anymore. Until the 1-year anniversary, things had been relatively quiet. And as we came up on the 1 year, US figure skating launched a campaign called More Than Medals. The purpose of the campaign was to shed light on the situation that it was the first time in Olympic history that a team who had earned a medal at the Olympics had left without their medal. But this whole thing is so much more than a medal at this point. It's about integrity and accountability and the values that we uphold as athletes and as sport organizations.
And that's why we're so honored to be here today, honestly, is to recognize the work that's being done in the anti-doping movement. And as athletes, we are the ones who reap the benefits of all the hard work that the researchers do and the policymakers do. You know, without your work and your dedication, there would be no fair play. There would be no level playing field, because the fact of the matter is there will be people who are trying to get ahead, who will cut corners at the expense of their competitors. And for those people, I think the ends justify the means. And that's the sad reality. But to be here today and to see all of you and to thank you personally is a big honor for us. And we just want to say thanks.
And we also love the tagline of this conference: world-class research for world-class play. That really resonates with us. It's so powerful. It's so true. And without you being the best in the world at what you do, we could not be the best in the world at what we do. So we are incredibly grateful for everything you do and continue to do in your research to help protect the integrity of sport and uphold the values that are so important to all the athletes around the world. So thank you from the two of us. And thank you from Team USA. And thank you from all the teams and all the clean athletes who compete all around the world. We really appreciate the work you do, and we couldn't do what we do without you doing what you do. So thank you so much.
So next, we're going to go on to question and answer. At each of the desks, you have a microphone. You can push the on button if you have a question. I'll get it kicked off. I know there's hopefully some great questions in the audience, but obviously from the Partnership for Clean Competition, what we do is we try to ensure clean play and fair sport through anti-doping science and research that we fund. And it's great to have so many amazing partners, including USOPC, Major League Baseball, the NFL, and USADA. Just looking at the picture of you and the team with the empty medal boxes on that 1-year anniversary, what are some of the feelings and emotions that you all have just standing there reunited as a team, still waiting for a decision on what medal you are going to get?
So I felt very surprised at how emotional the 1-year anniversary was. I think as athletes, we develop a skill of compartmentalization. And, you know, for us in particular, we decided to continue competing, and just having this unresolved, you know, massive thing with this Olympic medal was looming over us. We just wouldn't function well if we just thought about it every day. So we just buried it. And honestly, like Maddie said, we didn't feel like it was being talked about much in the media. When 1 year came around and US Figure Skating put out a statement, so many people were like, you guys don't have your medals still? Where are your medals? And we're like, still, no, we don't have our medals still. And this photo was taken at Beijing. We have not been reunited as a team since we left Beijing. I'd say more than half of the team has moved on, gone to college, gotten married. You know, like the life of an Olympic athlete, the career of Olympic athlete is short, and the opportunities are so few and far between. They only come once every 4 years. So to leave without the ceremony, without the medal, was a huge deal. And, you know, I know it'll come. I know we'll get our medal eventually, but, you know, the moment has passed, and that's the part that is maybe just still a little bit bitter.
On the positive side, it looks like you channeled it into your competition this year and World Championship, ISU, first place as well in team competition. And then some personal news between the two of you.
Yes, we're engaged. We got engaged last summer after our touring had come to an end, and we just went on vacation, and it was very romantic. But since then, no, we've been really enjoying getting back to training, and we still have big goals and lots of a passion for our sport, and we want to continue to inspire future skaters and just show that if you have the passion and the drive, you can accomplish anything. And that's for us what's really important, and something that we've grown to love is the longevity and the aspect of how much you can learn as you continue to mature as athletes.
Yeah, I would add, like, you know, we've been at this a long time, and now we're starting to really enjoy some success, like a world title a few weeks ago. But it's more like, you know, the journey is the destination, that, you know, the people that we've become and the things that we've overcame together, and the way that has bonded us and, you know, contributed to our relationship today is the most meaningful thing. I mean, the medal is important, but it's not the most important thing. I feel like this is just an unprecedented event in Olympic history, and that, you know, as athletes growing up, there's an unspoken promise that we come to the competition, and if we do well, we leave with a medal. And that is something that we always took for granted, and never in a million years could we have ever guessed that this scenario would take place. And this isn't the kind of piece of Olympic history that we wanted to be a part of. But no, I mean, I know it will be resolved, but it's, you know, we've learned to hold on to the intangible things more than the medals.
In a way, maybe it will end up being more impactful, because people will be inspired to have clean performances and be rewarded for them. I think it's a real tragedy when that becomes overshadowed by other things.
So let's take some questions from the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand. Steve?
You know, obviously this is a tragedy and the sort of thing that we worry about here. Were you aware of, or, you know, concerned about doping in your sport prior to your personal experience? And if so, what types of doping substances do you think were being used in your sport at the time, and perhaps now?
I think it wasn't the first instance of doping in figure skating, dating back to Sochi. We had another competitor have a positive test in, I think, 2016 or 17 for meldonium. So, you know, but heading into the games, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not necessarily concerned about that, but I think there is a part of the culture of figure skating that there is doping happening, and I think it's not something that's expected from the casual fan. I'll tell a story quickly. We were drug tested right before we left for our U.S. championships this January, and, you know, we were having dinner and our doorbell rang, and a couple from Quebec came and drug tested us, and it was, you know, we had just gone to the bathroom, so we had to wait a while. So we started chatting, and they said, "What sport are you?" We said figure skating, and they said, "Oh, lucky, there's not much doping in your sport." And I said, "Funny you should say that, because we are waiting for our Olympic medal because of doping." And I just think that speaks to the fact that, you know, doping is not what we all think, you all know, but, you know, to the layperson out there, I think doping is not something that you would associate with figure skating. But, you know, in Sochi, the curler tested positive for doping. You know, it's unfortunately happening in all sports, and I think that's why we appreciate so much the thoroughness of your work, because most people wouldn't look under every rock and stone, and we know that you are.
You know, it's interesting. I was a doping control officer for about 12 years, and that's the worst thing, showing up on the doorstep and the athlete had just gone and you had to wait. But you got to usually talk and get to know the athletes a little bit. So that part's a good part. Other questions from the room, please. Don't be shy. Yeah, Nikolai.
See how this works. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm Nikolai Nordsborg. I'm at the University of Copenhagen, where we do anti-doping research as well, many different disciplines. One of them is related to social sciences. So my question is, if you think back at the time before you started to win, I guess you were also tested a lot. And how was your perception of the anti-doping movement back then? So was it something positively viewed upon? Was it annoying? Didn't it matter? So, and if you could go back to that time, what can be done to motivate the athletes who not necessarily wins the medal, but still are subjected to the paradigm of the anti-doping testing?
Well, I think in part, it's an honor to be part of the doping test pool, because you know that you're reaching a level in your sport that is being now looked at and investigated, and it's kind of like the elite get tested. And so for us, I mean, for me personally, I was excited to be included in that pool of elite athletes. And now being very familiar with the doping protocol and getting doped randomly and after competition, I mean, I appreciate the process even more. It's certainly not a burden, and one I'm happy to take part in, just because I know how important it is and how much it impacts all of the clean athletes all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe as athletes, we could speak more positively publicly about the anti-doping system, because, you know, as now we're mature athletes, and I think we recognize now the significance of having a robust anti-doping process and how that is the foundation for the entire system that the athlete needs to have absolute faith in. And when there is just a modicum of doubt about, you know, the integrity of the system, I think then everything starts to fall apart. And I think now that we've been kind of entangled in this doping scandal, I think obviously like our stories have changed, but I would love to be part of that voice of an athlete who's saying that the anti-doping system is a great thing. They're not trying to get you, you know, they're just trying to preserve the integrity of the sport so we can all have an equal chance at winning a gold medal when we show up at the competition.
I feel like with having Travis here in the front row, that was a great answer.
No, I actually just got an email yesterday saying I have provided 90 months of my whereabouts to USADA and I get something in return. And I was pretty excited about that.
Questions? We still have some time for a couple more questions. Don't be shy. Olivia.
Yes, thank you. Do you think this situation in Beijing is going to be an eye-opener in your discipline about doping, or do you think it's perceived to be an isolated case, isolated situation, and life move on with the same perception on doping in ice skating?
I think the outcome will determine some of that. It's certainly been, you know, in the moment, it felt like a huge story. When we were in Beijing, it felt like it was plastered across every outlet around the world. I would say I would have thought that about Sochi. I thought that, you know, what happened in Sochi was so big that maybe that would have been the tipping point. We have said that we hope that this is the tipping point that will change the perception of, you know, organized doping. But I don't know. I don't know.
Any other questions? Yeah, Gary.
Thanks for coming. Great talk. You know, one of the things that's come up with your situation is the influence of coaches. And obviously you guys have been through different coaches, because we often blame the athlete, but it's really their support system around them. Can you comment on the influence that coaches have on these athletes, especially in your sport?
Coaches have a tremendous effect on the athletes. They're really the role models and the mentors that we look up to, especially if you're a young athlete up and coming in your sport. The coaches are huge aspects of how you become molded as an athlete, what's ingrained in your values, what's ingrained in your mentality. So having knowledgeable coaches and supportive coaches is a life-changing, honestly, and coming from many different coaches and experiencing the different styles and the different techniques and tactics that coaches take with their students, I can say that the more you can support the athlete and nurture them as a person and not just an athlete, the more success that is seen in my experience.
And I think, this particular case is unique because, a minor is the athlete involved. And I think in that instance, we have to look at the people around that athlete. And, I think we have a certain amount of empathy for the athlete in question here because she's a 15-year-old minor, and we know what the culture of sport is, and being a young athlete with a coach, you want to be a people pleaser and you want to be a star student. And I think, very often, maybe not very often, but occasionally, athletes can be put into very compromising situations. And, we're all for athlete empowerment and protection of athletes, and certainly minors.
Any other questions? Last chance. Yeah. Rob. Yeah, I think so. There you go.
Rob Keeler from Global Athlete. First of all, amazing presentation, and proud of you guys for taking the high road because I would have taken a very different one. It's shown that the anti-doping system is kind of working. So you have Sochi that ended up exposing institutionalized doping through WADA's reports. You have Valieva, who was tested positive, but no one knew about it and it was delayed. So the system itself potentially is working from a research perspective. But from an athlete perspective, be interested in you where you think the human capital and the human frailty has failed you, including the bureaucracy. So in Sochi, it was one person slipping, in the FSB slipping things. It was humans messing up the system, not research. In Beijing, it was humans. So a test result that never came timely. You had the IOC making decisions that wasn't normal in terms of Olympic movement. What message would you send to sport leaders across the world and in this room? What needs to be improved when it comes to human capital and the bureaucracy of doping?
I think it goes beyond just the lab and the testing. I think as athletes now, with the experience that we've been through, we see the need for robust legal processes that are going to ensure that, the fair play is upheld in the court of law. And I think that is something that we didn't expect when we left Beijing. The timetable that has passed, deadlines that haven't been met, and it's difficult because we go to these competitions and we have press conferences, and all year basically we're being asked about our team medal, and we're just shrugging our shoulders and say we don't know, we don't know. And I think the transparency, Maddie said, the transparency, good governance, accountability, like the pillars of the Olympic movement that they speak about, are things that should be upheld.
Well, thank you very much from the Partnership for Clean Competition. We greatly appreciate you being here and being the keynote to this conference. Our partners at Major League Baseball have a little gift for you from Major League Baseball and from the Partnership for Clean Competition. So we appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.